You wanna get high, man?
Let's stimulate your mind.
Get up, Chucky!
What have we got here? A fucking comedian.
Rojan Kim.
Hello, and welcome to the Rojan Kim cast. It's me, Rojan Kim. Thank you for joining me on this last day of June 2020, June 30th, 2020. Here we are, 6 months in the year 2020, which I like to call the year of the unbearable whiteness of being. That's what it seems to be coming out. I mean, it is a pandemic year, but I think the most sickening thing that's going on, something I like to call the unbearable whiteness of being. Whoa, man. I mean, I've been accused of being a banana, don't get me wrong, but I'm not that white on the inside. You know what I mean? It's just filled with just guilt and just energy, just that energy that wants to just colonize everything, just colonize every movement, take it all over. But you know what? That's neither here nor there. That's, I guess, a little more closer to the last episode about Hillary. You know, Karens love colonizing a cause. But today I want to talk more about public health, because that is really what has been the twin issues facing our society these few months, right? We had public health issue. We had the racial Black Lives Matter, defund the police. We have all that, we got all that going on. And now it looks like we're sort of swirling back. We had the Me Too Part 2. Now, going back to pandemic. We're going back to COVID. Okay. That would have been better if I had actually prepared that instead of I'm riffing. All right. So today, you got your little tiny little Dr. Fauci is testifying before the Senate, and I'm sure he's telling everybody how, it's awful, it's horrible. I can't believe people aren't listening to the science. I can't believe people aren't listening. It's awful. And I'm sorry, the guy who lied to us about masks is the guy telling us that he can't believe people aren't listening to the scientists. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I wonder why people wouldn't trust the authorities. I wonder why, right? This thing just went under the radar, but 2 weeks ago, there's an article I posted from the 15th. There's only 2 news sources. None of the major news sources, of course, cover this. There's a whole great episode on Jimmy Dore where he goes through this at length. I don't need to really go through this at length. Listen to him if you want to really do a deep dive into how Fauci lied to us. But the bottom line is, he admitted that he lied to the public when he said masks didn't work at the beginning, back in fucking March and February. He said that. The reason he said that, he said, was because he wanted to prevent a run on masks from the public so that they could have enough PPE for nurses and doctors. So basically, he admitted that there was a shortage and that he lied to the public, misled them in order to stop them from hoarding masks so that they could have them for the health workers. In fact, I think I made a joke. I remember making a joke back then. I remember making a joke saying, well, if masks don't work, why do we need them so badly for health workers? Like, it didn't make any sense. So they do work. And you purposely misled the public and said that they didn't work that's really interesting, That's kind of like saying there was a seatbelt shortage. And so, just everybody opt out of having seatbelts in your cars. And then later on, people being like, oh, no, we just needed those seatbelts for like officials, for like cops and, people who were like, for the people who come to rescue people who crash their cars, we needed them for them. And so, we had to, sorry, that's a little boo-boo on our part, a little ouchie, a little Fauci's ouchie, right? Well, sorry. So then let's follow this logically. So the masks do work and they do help. And they could have prevented a lot of sickness and dying. And so that was the cost. I mean, people died, right? If they work, that means people died. So that means all this talk of like people are going to die and the lives being lost and they're going to die. Well, what about back then when you said that the masks didn't work? What about the people who died from that lie? Does that matter? Does that matter at all? But nobody gives a fuck about that. What people are really into right now, everybody's major kink, is mask shaming, right? On the street. outside. If you don't see a masked person, you point at that. It happened to me. This fucking old guy, it was like an old Jewish guy. He was dressed in the Jewish garb, and he was walking down the street, and I was walking my dog. There's nobody else around but this guy. We were like 20 feet away. I was moving out of the way to get out of his way, and then as he passes me, he touches his mask, like boop, 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 like he's telling me to fucking wear a mask. He's touching that, right? And I was just like, don't touch your face. Don't touch your face, and I'm sure that freaked him out. But that's the whole thing. It's like the second you shame someone, you can just turn it right back at them. You understand? Like, for instance, if somebody comes at you, shaming you, telling you to wear a mask, you could just tell them, well, it spreads by talking, so you're making it worse. Please stay away from it. Just tell them to stay away. Tell them to stay away. Okay? Fucking, yeah, you're talking that you're trying to tell me that I'm spreading it when you're spreading it. You're spreading it right now. The masks don't work that way. If you knew how masks work, then you know that you shouldn't even be talking, because the talking is not that's what spreads it. So stop talking. How about you shut your mouth? How about you shut your mouth and keep moving on? And this isn't like see, here's the thing. It all got fucking politicized. So now it's like you cannot have a nuanced conversation about this. You can't have a conversation about, okay, well, what does it mean masks work? Like, for instance, do you think what that means is that you just put on a mask and suddenly there's no virus? Like, you just put a mask on in your house and now you're protected and nobody else will get sick? Do you think that's how it happens? You stay home, wear a mask at home, and that's what you do? That's not how it works. I mean, you understand that's not how it works, right? This whole mask shaming thing outside, it's just busybody nonsense. It's just busybody. It's just a way of being like, you, and because it's been politicized, you got morons on both sides. You have fucking idiots being like, you gotta wear a mask no matter what. And then the idiots on the other side being, masks don't work. It's a symbol of oppression, right? Turning it into a symbol of freedom. It just so, all of it is just dumb, right? And instead of saying, hey, our leadership brought us here. Our leadership is really they are the ones who got us to this point. Media, the government, everybody in charge, they're the ones to blame for how riled up the public is. And that's why on one hand, I'm like, just shut up. If you're going to go around pointing your finger at people, that I can't fucking deal with that. But on the other hand, I'm a person of the people. You know what I mean? Like, I'm of the people. So I understand people are just reacting to the leadership. People are just reacting to the powers that be. People, that's what they do. People, leadership provides groundwork, boundaries. The fucking, they provide what the paradigm is, and the people adjust. They either go along with the system or they try to exploit the system or whatever. But people will always work in a systemic way, right? I mean, that's what this whole systemic racism, implicit bias, like all this stuff, that people talk about, that's what we're saying, right? And people are basically, I don't think we're automatons, and I don't think we're like pawns of the system per se. I mean, I think there's some agency, some resistance, there's always going to be people who scam the system, you know what I'm saying? But there is a system, right? And instead of sort of criticizing the system, and instead of saying, hey, why do these guys fucking lie to us? And aren't these lies from both sides of the aisle? Aren't these lies why we are in this mess? No, instead you blame the public, you blame each other. The left, blames the right. Republicans blame Democrats. Black versus white. It's a divide and conquer. Divide and conquer. It's all part of the same thing. Like, all right, I think it was when I was I had that guest on, Nick Linsmeyer. Like, we were talking about recycling, right? And sort of like this whole thing of like, I get like how the pressure to make people recycle, there's like this social pressure to recycle, but you also understand that like, and he was actually arguing with me about this a bit, but then at the same time, he's the one who told me that like, it's not worth it for recycling centers to recycle if oil is under $40 a gallon, which it is. So that means it's cheaper for them to just take that trash and put it in a trash pile instead of recycling. See? You understand what I'm saying? So what is the point of shaming people for not recycling when it's the system that is not going to recycle, right? So even if you put the bottle in the blue bin, if gas, if oil is under $40 a gallon or barrel, $40 a barrel, then they won't recycle anyway. So then who should we be shaming? You understand? Does that make sense? Am I just, yes, I know I am. I'm just a madman rambling. I'm just rambling into the camera about recycling. How did I just jump from masks to recycling? I don't get it, Rojan. Are you fucking insane? Yeah, okay. Listen, I'm gonna take you, someplace else. Maybe you'll be like, this has nothing to do with anything. But I'm trying to tell you why I don't blame people. Okay, this is also what happened during the financial crisis, right? Housing market crashed. And what did a lot of people say? You know what a lot of people say? They say, well, those people should have known better than to take those loans. Those people should have known better than to take those loans, and it's their fault there was a housing financial crash. Yeah, that's the reason, not the entire culture that said that getting a house is really the end all be all, and then you could flip that house because everybody's flipping houses and everybody's making money. Like that's from the public. That's from the public, not the fucking subprime mortgage loan industry, like a whole industry built on fucking just moving loans out the door without even any kind of like, without checking to see if you can actually pay it back, just handing loans out because everybody is just like, no matter what, your house is going to go up in value, so just take the loan. People taking out these like variable interest loans, all these shit, and then taking all those loans, chopping them up, and then turning them into derivatives, and then selling them to Wall Street, and then everybody being like scammed, like Goldman Sachs saying that like, oh no, like rating them as A+ ratings when everybody knew those, that all that stuff, all those like mortgage-backed securities, they were all bullshit. Everybody knew. They all knew. I mean, a lot of people knew. A lot of people knew, like, like in The Big Short, there were enough people knew, made tons of money off of it when the whole thing came crashing down. And yet it's the little guy. Let's blame the consumer. That's what we do. Your fault, consumer. Not the system, not the people in charge, not the powers that be, not everybody who enabled it and made it happen, but you, the public. You're at fault. See how much disdain there is for just the common person, regardless of race, regardless of any of that, just the average person making decisions. You see how much disdain there is for that person? None for the people who set all of this up and get rich off of it. And then when it all comes crashing down, they get rich off of that too. And they just blame it on us. I don't know. And meanwhile, I feel like we're all just taking it hook, line, and sinker. So that's sort of the line I'm connecting, right? The same thing with the mortgage-backed securities, same thing with fucking recycling, and same thing with mask shaming, right? It's just like the impetus is put on the public for some reason to create shame, to create conflict, to create an utter lack of nuance in our conversation about a very important thing. I mean, this is about saving lives. Listen, Czechia, South Korea, Vietnam, there's a list of countries. All these countries have been squashing this pandemic, probably for two reasons. One, early adoption of masks, social distancing, not necessarily lockdown, right? That's the other thing. Lockdown is not correlated with success. What seems to be correlated more with success is individual behaviors such as social distancing, mask wearing indoors, all that stuff. If we had all worn masks indoors from the beginning, we wouldn't need to lock down. If we had just isolated the sick, the vulnerable, worn masks, practiced the social distancing, practices, done the stuff that other countries did instead of politicizing the shit, then we'd be okay. We would be just like those other countries squashing this thing right now. But instead, because of the election year, because honestly, probably because of failed impeachment, because all of that is just weaponized, right? Weaponized, and guess who's the victim? Guess who the real victims are here? Huh? Us. The USA. Well, no, that's not to say that like, oh, we're guilty. There are plenty of morons, plenty of people here, plenty of people who could have stopped this, plenty of people who could have, whatever. But really, let's look at the leadership. Okay. We don't even ask the question, why was there a shortage of PPEs? Greatest country in the world, richest country in the world. We use 4 times the amount of things. Every single industry of ours, every single person consumes 4 times the amount of stuff, just everything. We generate 4 times the amount of trash as the average person in the world. So take another person on the planet, and we are eating and shitting 4 times as much as that person. So why wouldn't we have 4 times as much PPE? Why wouldn't we have that? Whoa, I wonder why. Well, here's one reason why. It's the just-in-time inventory that you've probably heard about. the privatizing of our healthcare. We don't have, you know, a lot of those countries that have squashed this shit beyond everybody sort of cooperating, doing masks, whatever, not politicizing the mask stuff. They encourage mask use, and they have socialized medicine, right? Or at least public healthcare. Socialize. I mean, that's just, they just have a single point of entry for healthcare, and everybody can be covered. You can see how that's an advantage. None of that's being talked about. We don't talk about any of that. It's just, oh, you're the mask, the mask. And then it's like, meanwhile, numbers are right. The numbers and the deaths and the numbers. And meanwhile, all the stats are being juked, okay? Here's the other thing about the mask thing. Okay, other people are just now saying, all right, now we got to make masks mandatory. We're going to have the government come in, force everybody to wear masks. Yeah, that's what we need. Oh yeah, how are you going to do that? How are you going to enforce it? The first thing you're going to do is fine people. Okay, and what if you refuse to pay the fine? What does that mean? You just have the cops you want to defund. The cops that we are all saying defund are the same cops we want to enforce the mask stuff, right? That's going to end well. You think that's going to be, you think those same racist, murderous cops are going to suddenly be chill about enforcing mask wearing? They're going to just be murdering people left and right. That's how that's part of this hypocrisy, right? That's part of the blindness. That's part of the just like not seeing how when you point the finger, you should be pointing that shit at yourself, right? You're actively calling for the state to come and crush dissent over mask wearing, yet at the same time you are calling for the defunding of the instrument of the state. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't, none of it is really thought through. And this is, of course, because there's no nuance. Because of the lack of nuance, because everything is an if-then or a black and white statement, a zero-sum game, everything just falls apart logically, right? There's no logical consistency because that's not actually the thing that's important. The thing that's important is that we're at war, right? You're either on this side or on this side. You're on the mask side or the non-mask side, or the freedom side or the fucking state side. You know, it's like creating all these divisions that are, frankly, dumb, right? It's dumb. I mean, there's been plenty of studies that show that, like, statistically, when it comes to lockdowns, that is not what correlates with success. What seems to correlate with success is the unity of the public and the government in each country in enacting policy. So the worst places, like the US, UK, the worst places seem to have politicized that stuff so that it becomes like a fundamental form of resistance to not follow public health measures because you perceive the government as being corrupt and trying to sort of push their agenda instead of actually caring about the public. And why would people think that, right? Why would people think that? So back to why there weren't enough PPEs and why they had to lie about it. First of all, there was a just-in-time inventory so that, you know, when there was a supply chain disruption from China, we couldn't get the stuff in time. But here's another reason, all right, which is also, for some reason, not being reported. And it's on The Intercept. Do I have to start doing like daily shows? Do you have to do like a little graphic? Should I put like a little graphic up? It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. Do I have to do that? But listen, go to The Intercept. You're going to find an article, right, that tells you about how there's evidence that China shipped a bunch of PPE out. They bought a bunch of PPE out of this country, basically took it out of the country right before the pandemic. So like, we're talking like January, February. There's evidence that the Chinese government took a shitload of PPE out of the country so that they could use it. And the American airline companies, they actually obscured that data. Why? Why would they hide this? Why would they? In fact, the people at The Intercept said the reason they found out is because they saw Chinese data. The Chinese like, yeah, we just got this huge shipment of PPE from the US, you know? Meanwhile, on this side, people in the US were like, we're shipping dolls over corn, not masks. You know what I mean? Like, interesting. No investigation on this. So could it be that there was a mask shortage because we actually gave away or sold all of our PPE to the Chinese when we should have been holding on to it ourselves? instead of admitting that, you know, systemically we have this whole thing that's just in time inventory, which we really shouldn't have done, you know, under the Democrats, really that happened. And then this whole privatized healthcare, you know, that's kind of an issue too. And then the idea that the Chinese just bought up all the PPE and we just like gave it all to them, you know, like the airline companies who took a huge hit during the financial crash, the coronavirus crash, like, you know, those airline companies would probably lose even more money and standing if people found out about this. Could it be? Or maybe Rojan. Are you like one of those conspiracy guys now? Is that what's happened? What happened to Rojan? Is he just like a conspiracy guy? Is he talking conspiracies? We lost him. He's like the Korean Alex Jones now. If again, you know, Alex Jung or whatever. I don't know. Like, no, it's hard not to be, but no, I don't, you know, here's my thing about conspiracy theories. It's just too easy a story. It just explains everything too, and I don't think everything can be explained that easily. It's too convenient a narrative, and it actually operates on everyone's competence, which I just don't see any real evidence for. Even with this whole thing going on, I don't see competence. What I just see is opportunism, people covering for each other. You know what I mean? I think this would be way better if it was competent. In fact, in some ways, I kind of wish we had one Chinese government. I would kind of envy the Chinese. At least they only have one government, right? At least there's not two sides fighting over each other, pretending like there's two sides, and then we have to get caught up in this dumb war. You know, at least with them, it's just like, this is it. It's us or the gulag, right? Instead of like two sides and you're not sure where the gulag is, the line keeps changing. You know what I mean? Like, at least just some clarity is all I'm saying. One of the things that is interesting to me nowadays is intersectionality. For me, my favorite flavor of intersectionality is Black gun rights activists, like Colian Noir was on Rogan recently, but also Eric July. One of my favorites, I think, is Eric July. Maj Tour is cool, but Eric July, they're kind of like libertarian Black gun owners, which I think it's awesome. Because you see white people trying to argue with him, Black people trying to argue with him, people's status trying to argue with it. It's great. It's great. I love it, because that you have to have a nuanced position in order to be that, right? In order to be a Black gun rights advocate, you have to have a nuanced position, because you're saying it's not the cops that are going to save us, it's not the state that's going to save us. We have the right under the Second Amendment as an American to learn proper gun ownership and protect ourselves. And honestly, the idea of gun laws comes out of the Black Panthers open carrying to watch cops, right? You understand? That's where we had nothing about, there was no gun rights, no gun control, none of that until the 60s, when Black people started to arm themselves in order to watch the cops. That's when it became a threat. Okay, interesting, right? So now you have that same energy, right? You have the same energy, you know, advocating for Black people to own guns, be responsible gun owners, and not rely on the state for the protection. Because how could you, right? But with all the cops and all that, wow, is that who, again, right? Who's going to enforce these laws? If we start enforcing laws like everybody has to wear a mask, or no one can be racist, who's going to enforce these laws? The racist cops. Yeah, that's what it sounds like, right? So I think that's one of the things that you look, follow them on Twitter. Seriously, if you want some real nuanced conversations about what's going on right now, especially in terms of politics, gun rights, and the pandemic, follow these dudes, man. Follow Colian Noir, Eric July. I like Eric July this. I mean, not the best, but I seem to engage with what he's saying a lot, because he's pretty funny too. In Maj Tour, they're very smart. They're all smart, funny, but also nuanced thinkers, right? And like, I'm not personally a libertarian. Here's the thing. I'm kind of like, I think I've decided that I'm a political nihilist. And that's what it is. Like, I don't really believe in anything anymore when it comes to politics. You know what I mean? It's just all pro wrestling. It really is. It literally, in fact, it's not even a funny thing to say. It's like just real. It is literally that. Okay. And so because of that, it's hard to believe in either side. You got to be a sucker to believe in either side if you don't see that there's a scam. If you see that there's a game being run, but then you say, you know, I have to join one side of this game in order to make sure the other side doesn't, that's the game. That's the game. Okay, man, we're all being suckered by the game. All right. Look, And that's the other thing. Because of the lack of nuance, any criticism of the dominant narrative is seen as an absolute rejection of the narrative. So if I say, listen, that's not how masks work, like walking around outside with a mask on, that's not doing anything except just symbolically wearing a mask. You know what I mean? You understand that the transmission of the virus is not airborne. You get that? Do you understand? So that's why the mask doesn't work outside. You understand that it's droplets of water. Do you know what happens when droplets of water go outside? Sure, they might spread, but they actually fall down to the ground. Okay, they fall down to the ground, they disperse, and then UV rays, like the temperature, ambient, just the temperature, whatever, it just ends up creating havoc on whatever microbes come out. So it's not like every time you breathe out, those microbes are alive forever and just floating around. Like, are you kidding? We'd all be dead. Do you understand that? That's not how it works. You understand how masks work? Masks work when you're in an enclosed space and everybody's breathing the same air, because now you're circulating the air and the viral load is going up and up. And so if everybody wears masks, then you're actually reducing the amount of droplets that go in the air. But you see, if you're in open air, the droplets evaporate. When it evaporates, the vaporization temperature kills the virus. UV light kills the virus. Heat is killing the virus, okay? The fact that it leaves your body and leaves the air, it kills the virus. It can't live. The virus has to find another host to live. And that happens in enclosed spaces, okay? So if you're in an enclosed space with an infected person, that one infected person can infect everybody, okay? Unless everybody's wearing masks, and you can probably reduce that transmission. But imagine if only one person is not wearing a mask in that enclosed space and that person is infected, all the people wearing masks, they're still going to get it, okay? Because you're in an enclosed space and the viral load is going up and up, and there's only so much your mask is going to do, okay? Unless you fucking end up covering every orifice in your body, sealing yourself tight, and then you would just die from asphyxiation. Does that make sense? You know what I mean? So when I get mask shamed now, I like to just tell people I'm a doctor. You know, I mean, I know it works because I'm Asian, you know, it's an easier sell, but you should try it, right? Somebody shames you and just be like, oh, I work in medicine. That's not how it works. Thank you, though. I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing because you're looking out for us, but that's not how it works. So if you want to know how it works, I'm glad to tell you, but otherwise just leave me alone, please. You're actually spreading it more by talking to me. So please keep your distance and keep your mouth shut. There you go. That's what I like to say, you know, because it's just, because people don't know what they're talking about. All they know is that they think they're on the right side. And they go, you're bad, I'm good, you're bad, right? And all you gotta do is just be like, nah, I'm a doctor. Am I a hero? Clap for me. Okay. I mean, listen, are cases going up? Sure. Is there more testing? Could it be because there's more testing? Yeah. Could it be because it's running through the population like it's supposed to? Yeah. So of course. Could it have been because of all those mass protests we had? All the virus circulating around? That could be true. And if that's true, if there are more cases, it's worth it to see who's being affected. Young people, old people. Of those cases, how many are hospitalized? How many are leading to death? Like this is more important than the number of cases. You understand? Like the cases actually, in some ways, more cases there are, the better it is, because the mortality rate is actually going down. If there are more cases and much less hospitalizations and deaths, that's actually a good sign. But that's not being discussed. See? Nobody talks about how like the cases going up actually increases the denominator. So that means the mortality rate is actually going down. The less people that are dying. It doesn't mean the death rate is going up as well, right? That's why in the end, it doesn't matter how many cases there are, because you need to know, in order to figure out mortality, you got to figure out the total amount of cases. And then you got to figure out, of that, how many people are being hospitalized, how many people are dying from it. That's the data we need, you know, not just this blanket number, not a blanket number of how many people have it. That's right. The entire population, the entire world could have it, right? But if only 0.1% die, or 5%, or whatever the number is, die, that's the important thing, right? That's the important thing. Of course, with the depth of nuance, then we don't need to discuss any of those things. Which is what we need is a scary number that gets bigger and bigger. And that's not to say there isn't an issue. Like I heard in Houston right now, their ICU is at 90%. See, that's bad. That's not a good thing. That's bad. And that's the thing we were trying to prevent, right? Could it have been more preventative? We had been very clear at the beginning of our public health policies, and especially what we're telling the public? Probably. But let's also think about who it is that is most vulnerable to being hospitalized. It's people with comorbidities, obese people, diabetes, old people, and I will bet you dollars to donuts that Houston's got a lot of those. A lot of fat, sick people. You know what I'm saying? Texas, fatties, sickies. Yeah, that's what it is. If you look at the real data, if you look at just the data of who's actually dying, half of them are from nursing homes. Okay, like half. Doesn't that tell you something? It tells you that the people most at risk are actually the elderly, the ones that are already infirm, the ones that are on their way out. I mean, it's not, and that's the whole thing. Everybody's like, oh, the death, that's cruel. You've got blood on your hands and the deaths. And it's like, okay, if that's true, then let's go all the way back to the beginning and talk about our leadership, right? Because if you've got blood on your hands for not wearing a mask, if I've got blood on my hands for not wearing a mask right now, what about Dr. Fauci? Huh? What about Fauci when he lied to us? Does he, how much blood? He must be swimming in it. He's blood up to here. You know what I'm saying? Like that, but no, of course not. No. He's deified. Let's put him on a pedestal. Let's put him in a, Andrew Schultz says he's a Keebler elf. Let's put him in a Keebler elf house. Okay, let's put a little green hat on him if I can make him president of health, right? It's just, I'm shaking my damn head. SMDH, okay? I mean, right now you got New York saying that, like, here's a list of states you have to quarantine. You know, if you come from these states, you have to quarantine if you enter New York, right? And it's just, and California is on that list now too. But let's not forget that New York was probably the super spreader. New York, it's probably running through New York, and then all those people who left New York, they probably ended up just spreading it all across the country. So let's not forget about that, okay? Let's not forget that it's just spreading one way and the other, and how are you going to actually enforce any of this? Are there going to be military checkpoints? You fucking checking where you're coming from? It's completely unenforceable, and the push to enforce it leads to martial law, the thing that we don't want because of how violent and militarized the police are. So here we are. We're at a conundrum, right? Where we need to enforce this stuff, but who is going to enforce it? The cops you want to defund? I don't know. We're hitting July. Is July now? July, August, September, and then November. We're like 4 months. We got 4 months, 3 or 4 months of this shit until the election. And then after that, God, I just hope to God if Joe Biden can actually fucking shake Donald Trump's hand in front of everybody, so we can finally calm down, okay? And stop this Hillary, stop this Ronda Rousey, Hillary, no shaking hands bullshit that, like, we are fucking, it's ruined the country, okay? I know that was the subject of my last podcast, but I can't just drop it. It's ruined the country. All right, so that's where we are. I just hope that we can all just fucking shake hands with ourselves, you know, with a mirror. Look at the mirror. That's you. The mirror, the bad guys, the Republicans, the Trump, the whatever, bad, evil ones, that's you. That's the mirror. The racist retards, like, you're like, those guys, the city people are like, the middle of the country are the racist and retards. And it's just like, liberals are the biggest racist retards, okay? That's the real thing. Just look at yourself in the mirror. Look at yourself. All right. I guess that wasn't very funny. I don't know. And I also feel like this is boring. It's hard to know. You know, everybody's kind of talking about the same stuff. Everybody's going on about it. But I feel like, you know, I'm not necessarily talking about the same stuff in the same way. So maybe it's worth it. I have no idea. Honestly, I do this because I'm a crazy person. You know, I know that it's not like I do it because it's monetized. It's not like I do it because there's a big listenership. You know, it's I do this, you know, just because I'm mentally ill, and that I mean, I'm mentally ill in the way we all are. Okay, don't be worried. Don't worry. I'm okay. I look in the mirror for 3 hours at a time, just fucking, you know, just hating myself. Okay, so I wake up at 5 in the morning for 3 hours straight. I just stare right in the mirror and be like, who do you think you are? What are you white? Are you black? What are you? Yin yang? Huh? I'm the human personification of yin yang. All right. Okay. I feel like you've had enough and I should just spare you. Honestly, I'm just trying to get rid of the extra data I got on this podcast streaming plan. So I'm just doing what I can to make the $20 I spend a month worthwhile. Anyways, I think let's wrap it up. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening, for watching the Rojan Kimcast. You know what to do. Follow me online, the Twitter and the Instagram. Please follow me or subscribe to me on YouTube. Go to the Apple, go to the Google, the podcast places, the Spotify, whatever. Leave a review. Give me a rating. Leave a review. Make it so that it's somewhat worthwhile. I mean, you don't have to. It's honestly worthwhile that I know some of you are out there and that, we're still here. Okay? We're all still here. We're doing fine. I mean, some of us may have lost some people. Some of us may have gained some people, some births. There's some births going on out there. And that's life. Life is continuing. Life is going on. And meanwhile, what I see is that our leadership doesn't actually care about that. Our leadership would prefer to sacrifice lives for their cause. Okay? And I'm not a lamb, man. You're not a lamb either, And we just gotta gotta keep our heads up and love the ones who are right by you. You know what I'm saying? Your small circle, the people in front of your eyes, the people that you can actually reach out and touch. That's what's important. What am I doing? I think I'm gonna start a church. Here's what I think what I would do is start a church and turn this into a God thing. So I think that it's a better sell. There's gotta be something at the end of all this. It just can't be nihilism. And honestly, I'm not really a nihilist. See, that was the whole other thing. I know I was wrapping up, but just one last thing. Like, I'm actually very optimistic. I'm like one of the most optimistic people I know in terms of when it comes to the human spirit, when it comes to believing that people will come together, when it comes to believing that when actually engaged, a person will start listening to reason on a one-on-one level, just like with Daryl Davis, you know what I'm saying? Just like with, countless examples. People who are like extreme, and then they just meet somebody who they hate, and then they realize, it's actually not that bad. God damn. And then your whole world just starts breaking apart because you realize, they're all fucking lying. The leaders are lying to you in order to get your support, get your money, for you to become their talking points, their mouthpieces, for you to spread their stupid messages, okay? So instead, why don't you spread my stupid message? Share this. I don't know. Thank you for listening. Thanks for your time.